Good evening, everyone. It's your boy, Richard Graves from the Richard Graves Group. Thank you all for tuning in and listening. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I do appreciate you. I appreciate your support. This topic we're going to talk about today, there's been a few topics that people have asked me to talk about. So I decided to run a little weekly or maybe every other day program where I simply give content about a specific issue. I'm going to attempt to address some of the more complicated socio-political issues that we have and cultural issues that we have going on in the United States up until this election coming up next year. And one of them is the current migrant crisis in Chicago. A few friends of mine have asked me to talk about it. I've been hesitant to talk about it and a few other issues like the conflict in Israel and Ukraine, but I'm going to address those head on. So looking forward to your comments and thoughts about the content. These will be short videos, probably no more than 15 minutes, to really get to the meat of the situation and discuss it and try to flesh things out. Now, what brought me to the migrant crisis is that the president of the Illinois NAACP chapter made some comments about some migrants in Chicago that were taken very badly. They've been asking for her to resign. Many of the politicians in the state have asked her to resign. Many people in her organization have asked her to resign. Now, I am not a member of the NAACP. I have been somewhat critical of them. So I just wanted to put that out there so we can get some context of what I'm going to say about the whole situation. But first, let me let you hear what she had to say in her own words.
Average 10 to 15,000 a day. So they're up to about 80,000 immigrants on the west side of Chicago and the south side, where they're dumping them off in parks, abandoned schools, and finding every apartment that they can find to put them in. People are even renting out abandoned buildings and allowing them to live up in there. That's inhumane because they don't have the sewage, the plumbing, the draining, but to get them off the streets, they're just housing them everywhere. And you have homeless folks who they didn't offer to put anywhere or provide a meal to. But once you agree to take that funding, that federal funding, they're bringing them to you. So Springfield, Peoria, Bloomington, Kankakee, the rest of us, just get ready if you declared yourself to be a safe haven or a safe place for immigrants to come, because they are shopping around and the busloads are coming and we're seeing families on the street and we're like, oh my God, we're not used to seeing families on the streets. But Black people have been on the streets forever and ever, and nobody cares because they say that we're drug addicts. We got mental health issues, but these immigrants have come over here. They've been raping people. They've been breaking into homes. They're like savages as well. They don't speak the language and they look at us like we were crazy because we were the only people in America who were brought over here against our wills and were slaves, sold into slavery. But everybody else who comes over here, we're so kind, we're so friendly. You need some clothes, you need a place to stay. We're going to make it happen. So brother, I feel your pain. I'm right there with you. I'm trying not to be a but you know I'm pro-Black, so it's all about us, people. And NAACP, what do those letters mean to you? What does it really stand?
Okay, well, let's talk about it for a little bit. I think a lot of people are jumping on her about the use of the term savage. Now, based on what I heard from this statement, this is how I take it. She started out talking about the fact that there are migrants being brought to sanctuary cities here in Illinois, Chicago primarily amongst them. We see this happening in other cities across the country. But since we're talking about Chicago, let's keep it there. She contextualizes it by comparing the fact that there have been homeless people and in the communities where these people are being brought to, some underprivileged communities where people have been suffering in Chicago. And let me make it very clear, under a Democratic-run government, people have been suffering and nothing has been done to alleviate that suffering. I mean, I'm sure many of you are aware of the homeless population situation in Chicago, and you're also aware of the lack of mental health supports in Chicago and in Illinois, which is something I believe is across the country. But these are things that drive that homeless population. Unfortunately, drives them into our correctional center often, our correctional system often. So this becomes an issue of taxpayer dollars. I think what she was trying to say is now that we have migrants coming to our state, that we're able to find funding or get federal funding. And I know she used the term savages. Like I said, I'm not a defender of the NAACP. I do not know this woman personally. I think what she was trying to contextualize is that Black people often are looked at as the lowest people in our American society by some. And that, I guess she was trying to say that the migrants aren't any better because there's criminals amongst them. Like I said, I'm not trying to defend her statement. I'm just trying to contextualize it. I think she had a lot to say there, and there was a lot more to unpack than simply saying that she called them savages. Now, I'm going to say this. I don't believe we should call any other group of human beings savages. That being said, let me get to what I have to say about the situation. Now, what we have is a problem that I don't think that people are actually thinking about or talking about openly. There is an issue between these African-American community and even some of the Latin American communities in Chicago, and even some of the white and Asian and Arab communities in Chicago. There are people that are upset that these migrants are being brought to Chicago and being deposited in neighborhoods in tents, living in whatever shelters they could be made. And I understand that people should be upset about that. And let me be frank. The state of Illinois, the state of Chicago particularly, was constantly dogging out the governors of Texas and Arizona and the border states that have actually dealt with this issue. And I'm not defending them either. I'm not saying they dealt with it properly. However, when you declare yourself a sanctuary state and put yourself in judgment on the states that are actually dealing with the migrant issue, you set yourself up for what just happened. People are going to pull your card. So those Southern governors pulled the card of the mayor of Chicago at the time, Lori Lightfoot, and started dropping off migrants. They pulled the card of the governor of the state of New York. They pulled the card of, different governors in different states and different mayors in different cities that were criticizing the southern border states' response to the migrant issue. And when you say you're a sanctuary state, there you go. You're a sanctuary state, you're a sanctuary city. Now here are these migrants, and it's getting cold, and now it's time to really do sanctuary. So I think what that points out is that the left has often criticized the right-wing response or the Republican response in border states, and rightfully so. I mean, I think that there was things that could be done as a nation that we need to talk about this particular problem. I don't think we're actually talking about the problem. We're just knee-jerk reacting to it. We have a group on the right that simply says to build a wall, don't let anyone else in. And then you have the group on the left that simply says we should have open borders. None of those are intelligent positions. Let's think about this. The first thing in any problem, what is the cause of the problem? Why are we having so many migrants trying to enter our country? And I'm going to put it out there for you guys. Real talk, it comes down to this, our drug problem. Our drug problem creates and fuels an underground economy in countries like Guatemala, Nicaragua, Ecuador, El Salvador, Mexico, and other countries in South and Central America. Our thirst for drugs and our appetite for them and us spending money on them creates these situations where you have cartels, you have gangs, very different and very more intense than the ones we have here in Chicago or New York or LA. And it's causing, basically, these people are living in a state of warlords, of terrorism, domestic terrorism to their people. These people being held hostage and they're trying to flee it. And I don't blame them for trying to flee to the United States. Plus, there's the other issue. You have all these multinational corporations in the United States like Purdue, Dole, all those all the corporations that own farms that seek to hire migrants, to hire them at a very, very cheap rate compared to what they would have to pay an American worker. People want to say American workers are lazy, but no, it's not that. American workers can go work at Portillo's for $19 an hour. They can go work at McDonald's for $16 an hour. They don't have to go and work the fields. So the people that you are allowing in our country to work those fields, that's a labor distortion. This distortion to the true cost of labor. And the American people need to be real about that. Either we're good with these people coming in, or you're good with paying $10 for a bag of lettuce. It's up to you. And that's the real conversation that needs to be had. Two things driving the people coming is, one, that they're fleeing real situations. Two, that they're being hired in the United States. And that's everybody. I don't care. There's people who hire migrants for their work in their homes, doing construction work, doing contractor work, doing landscaping services, restaurants, people who own restaurants. So let's not deny the truth. All right, we're allowing this because some people want the labor, and then of course there's some on the left that want this as a voting base. Ultimately, this is an issue of symbolism, but look at where these migrants are being deposited. They're being deposited in African American neighborhoods, and I'm gonna tell Black folk, the fact is that they're being deposited there in order to, ultimately you have the less political power to argue it. You guys in Chicago, for example, you have voted for these administrations that continue to show you that they really don't care about your demographic, yet you continue to vote for them. And I'm not saying that the Republicans are any better. I'm saying just start thinking about who you're voting for. And honestly speaking, in your last mayoral election, the only thing you had was a choice between two Democrats. You picked one that was more left than the other one. You might want to start thinking about that. And you might want to start making some demands about your community. But that's a different show, a different topic. Let's get back to these migrants. So here we go. We have folks coming to the country that are fleeing persecution. And I can understand it as a humanitarian. Of course, we want to help people. So we need to be real about what that looks like. Are we really trying to help these people? And if we are, there's a way that we need to do this. There's a way that we need to do this so we can address that there is a crime issue, and that there is an issue of sex trafficking that goes along with this. And of course, there's drug trade that goes along with this as well. So there are some actual law enforcement issues, and those need to be addressed. And that needs to be addressed by how we let people in our country. Now, I'm not saying to not let people in our country when they're fleeing persecution. I'm saying that there should be a process by which we do this, that we are ensuring not just the safety of the migrants, but the safety of the population of the United States, the population of the states and cities that the migrants will ultimately go to. Ultimately, there should be a shared responsibility of all the states in the United States of America. Chicago, New York, and Baltimore should not be the concentration focal points. And neither should the border states have to deal with this by themselves, where they are, people are sitting up here in judgment, but they were being basically having floods of migrants coming and having to deal with that logistically. And honestly speaking, neither the Democrats or the Republicans are having a real talk about what it looks like to actually deal with the issue. And I'm gonna be honest with you, Democrats on the left, and Democrats and the left, I'm gonna say this: you act as if the Black people in these neighborhoods aren't supposed to feel some type of way about what they're seeing. Of course they are. The Democrats in Chicago have consistently given Black people less ever since the end of the civil rights movement. Black people in Chicago have faithfully voted for the Democratic Party. And what have they gotten in return over the last 30, 40 years is worse schools, worse economic opportunity, higher crime. And I know people are going to get on to say that crime is down. Yeah, crime is down in the city of Chicago, but it's higher in specific areas. A lot of those areas are specifically concentrated African-American areas. So we can put our heads in the sand and play the statistical analysis game and act like we're not knowing what's really happening. But that's that. The higher crime comes down to the lack of economic opportunity. And so Robert Peel, the gentleman who started the who started the Metropolitan Police in London, England in the early 1800s, he wrote very clearly that one of the things that drives crime is poverty. And you have a concentration of poverty, you're going to have a concentration of crime. And most people in these poor urban areas are not criminals. So I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that it does drive that. And something needs to be done. And again, there is a few factors need to be addressed on that. The education system, the healthcare system, the mental health care system, the economic opportunity and banking system, or I should say the system of finance and business. All of that needs to be addressed. But you're not doing that. It's not being done in Chicago. I can't speak for Baltimore and New York, but I would assume it's something similar. But that being said, in Chicago, this is the truth. This is what's happening. Nothing's happening. So it's a slap in the face to African-American citizens when you bring migrants in and you're providing services, scrambling to try to find housing and things like that. And let me be very clear. I think that we need to. The people are here now. The bottom line, we can't have people in the Chicago winter in the streets in tents. And I think that was piss poor planning on the part of the mayor of the city of Chicago. Again, if you talk that, hey, I'm going to be a sanctuary city, then you need to be prepared when someone pulls your card and makes you have to give sanctuary. It is unacceptable that we have these people coming here, fleeing persecution, and you got them living in tent cities. Who knows what type of abuse is happening to the female population that's unreported because they're not documented. So let's quit playing the game of pointing fingers at NAACP president for speaking up about the problem that Black people's having. And like I said, she chose the wrong words. I mean, I blame her. She does have to realize when you're talking as a leader of an organization like that, a chapter in the state of Illinois, you need to be careful with your words and careful how you communicate what you're saying. You can't throw around words like savages and think that no one's going to pull your card on it. And as the NAACP is supposed to represent colored people, not just Black people, which is why, I know a lot of people have a problem. A lot of the new ADOS and FBA people have a problem with the NAACP because it is supposed to support people of color, no matter where they come from. And the African-American community right now is seeking to really work with organizations that are focused on the African-American community. And neither here nor there, I think everybody wants to focus on their own group. But ultimately, the NAACP should be advocating for these colored people that are being brought from South and Central America who are fleeing persecution. So it says she should have thought about what she was saying. It looked like she was being recorded on Zoom. You got to be careful because people will put you out there. They'll misquote you or directly quote you if you say things like that. Like I said, I think I get the idea of what she was trying to communicate, but she did a very bad job. So now her card's being pulled, and now people are demanding for her resignation. That being said, again, that's a matter between the NAACP, the American political left, because they're part of it. I don't have a dog in that fight. I will say this, that she probably should have thought about what she was saying a little bit better. And you have to weigh your words because, like I said, people are going to take it as however they want to take it. But again, I say this to say that, on the other hand, the left is acting brand new, like they don't understand why Black people are some African Americans in these affected communities are having a problem with what they're seeing. And honestly, this just goes to show the left talks a lot about being allies of Black people, talks a lot about anti-Blackness and, then all these different things they say that they're the allies of. But the fact is, what meat are they putting on the plate? What is actually happening? Like I said, all I've seen in Chicago is things get worse under these democratic regimes. So, like I said, at the very least, hold the people that you've elected accountable and tell them what you want. That being said, I'll leave this at this. I'm going to talk about another topic tomorrow. I'll be back on. We're going to address the situation in Israel and some of the interesting political fallout it's had on America. All right, everyone, take care. God bless. See you soon. Peace.